Oh boy, this is the 10 a.m. video for today because of the way the rest of the NHL is scheduling their games. So without further ado, let's go over a topic that I kind of hate to talk about. And it comes to us in the form of a Nick Kypreos article published on thestar.com, or the Toronto Star, pretty much. Take a look at this article. Published on October 27th, 2022, the Leafs are more than halfway through the John Tavares contract. Was it worth it? Now, I know what you're thinking. You're a Red Wings fan, you're a Canucks fan, you clicked on this video, you're angry, you're trying to see what the heck Lego was talking about today. Why are you showing us an article about John Tavares and the Maple Leafs? What does this have to do with the Vancouver-Detroit thing that's in the title and the thumbnail? Well, that's kind of what I thought when I clicked on this article too. Hey, this is an article about Toronto. Let's read about John Tavares and everything that Nick Kypreos writes about him. But then you take a look at how Kypreos introduces the subject here. He starts out by talking about the pressure for NHL management teams and star players to find the right fit when it comes to long-term deals. If it's not the right fit, the damage of bad contracts can be disastrous for hockey clubs in the future. He talks about the Minnesota Wild, the Suter, and Parise buyouts. A more recent example is watching Canucks fans double-clutching on the direction their team is heading, and lamenting whether a true rebuild is in order. It's also hard, however, to imagine a rebuild for any team that just signed a soon-to-be 30-year-old JT Miller to a 7-year, $56 million extension. Okay, so he talks about long-term deals, other teams in the NHL that have given out long-term deals, and then he brings the topic in to John Tavares and talks about the context with that. Then, as you go further down the article, there's more Toronto talk, there's a little conversation about McDavid, etc., etc., but then you get to the end, and this is where things get a little bit interesting. Kipper's Corner kind of has the scoop here. If Leafs fans are feeling it, imagine how frustrated Canucks fans are about their winless start to the season. This was from a few days ago, by the way. A few eyebrows were raised amongst the management when President Jim Rutherford himself agreed to go on CBC's After Hours show last Saturday night and not send out new GM Patrick Allvin. One question that isn't being asked enough in Vancouver is why the Canucks, who had spent the majority of their offseason trying to shop Miller, suddenly made him a priority over Captain Bo Horvat, who is 2 years younger and staring at unrestricted free agency in the summer. The consistent message that Kypreos has heard is that it had to do with Horvat rejecting a low-ball offer that wasn't even close to what other comparable centers earn. Here's the last point written about Horvat. When trade talks eventually heat up, keep an eye on the Red Wings. With Dylan Larkin's contract demands as high as what Matthew Barzal received from the Islanders, 8 years at $9.15 AAV, Wings GM Steve Yzerman could instead choose to spend a good portion of that on Horvat, who's making $5.5 AAV in the final season of a 6-year deal he signed in 2017. Essentially, what Kypreos is saying is keep an eye out for the Vancouver Canucks to, I guess, let Bo Horvat go to free agency, and for the Red Wings to pick him up. Furthermore, he's also saying beware for the Red Wings to not re-sign Dylan Larkin at an extended amount of money similar to that of a Matthew Barzal. Now, the last time we had talked about the idea of a Larkin trade, it was talking about Frank Seravalli and his 32 Bold Predictions article. That conversation that we started based off of Seravalli got a lot of Red Wings fans pissed off. I remember the comment section, y'all were not having it, y'all were like, yeah, no, screw you, Seravalli. It was all over Twitter as well. The guy didn't make any friends by making that article, especially in Detroit, Michigan. But this idea kind of feels a little bit worse in my mind. Of course, it's not the same, oh, Larkin is going to get traded conversation. Instead, it's a Larkin is going to flat out just not re-sign and go to free agency conversation, only for the Red Wings to replace Larkin with another captain who is going to free agency as well in Bo Horvat. And, you know, I don't really know how I want to process that idea. We had ourselves Elliot Friedman and a few other NHL insiders over the past few days talking about on social media how the Canucks and the Horvat camp are very far apart. There's a line in the sand and no party has crossed either line, making this negotiation a really difficult one because there isn't any good sign at the moment. This is the quote from Rick Dhaliwal on Friedman on the Donnie and Dolly show. The Canucks are going to have to go to a higher number than maybe they wanted to when it comes to Bo. And we had already talked about this before as well, but when you talk about all the other comparisons that are being thrown out there as what Bo Horvat could fetch on the market, we have his agent saying that Bo is a first-line caliber center. We have other NHL insiders saying that the comparable number is Sean Couturier's 7-point-something AAV. Meanwhile, Sean Couturier was a 70-point guy, a Selke caliber guy who has been slowed down by injuries, but when he had signed that contract, he was already established as a premier top two-way forward in the entire NHL. Bo is not that, and if you say, oh, the cap is going to go up by $4 million, it still doesn't justify giving him the same comparable amount of money as a guy like Quinn Hughes, for example. You could say that Bo is your favorite Canuck over Hughes and Petey, etc., but it's difficult to go out there and say that he is flat out better and deserves to get paid more. This is why the conversation about Bo and the extension, it's been really difficult to process, especially when you acknowledge how the team prioritized Miller in a way by giving him the contract extension they did back in August, I think. And so, for Bo to potentially not be on the Vancouver Canucks in 2023-2024, it's starting to look more and more like an actual possibility here. Whether or not he leaves in free agency or he leaves via trade, I think if you're gonna lose him out, you have to trade this guy away. There is no reason for the Vancouver Canucks to go out there and say, okay, well, we tried to negotiate with Bo up until the free agency period opened up and we just couldn't get it done. So he ended up leaving, he's going over to Detroit because they didn't re-sign their captain, and now Captain Bo in Vancouver is now Captain Bo in Detroit. No, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't give the captaincy to somebody that has just been added to the team. I don't really think that's the proper course of action here. But when it comes to the Red Wings and their, let's just say, current inability to re-sign Dylan Larkin, I have a lot more of an easier time believing that Larkin could be a guy that gets that $7, $8, $9 million AAV contract, and it's actually kind of worth it. We've been saying this the past few years, but Dylan Larkin is a gamer, man, and he is going out there producing points. He gets more points than Horvat. He is younger than Horvat, too, which definitely puts a good omen on his name. And he's a guy who has already proven in the past that he can be somewhat of a more valuable player. He is a point-per-game guy. And when it comes to the fan base, their love for Dylan Larkin, the comparable number to Barzal, I mean, look, Barzal and Larkin aren't too different when it comes to their play style. They're both fast, they're both creative, they're both skilled, they both work pretty hard. You could debate that Larkin maybe works harder, maybe Barzal's a bit faster, but if I had to place these guys in like a tier list of who is kind of in the same tier, I'd put these guys above guys like Bo Horvat. I'd put Sean Couturier over Bo Horvat. It's kind of interesting to me, thinking about the idea of the Red Wings refusing to pay Dylan Larkin only to go out there on the market and overpay for a Bo Horvat, whose agent is going out there saying, yeah, no, my client deserves $7.7 million. He is a first-line center. He is this, he is that. If the Red Wings wanted to overpay for a guy like Bo Horvat, why not just pay Dylan Larkin like you would have regularly? It doesn't really make all too much sense to me, but either way, this is what Kypreos is bringing up in his article. I told you, man, this is what I said at the beginning. It's an article about John Tavares, but eventually it goes into everything else. Kypreos is speculating that if the Red Wings don't re-sign Dylan Larkin, and if the Canucks don't get Bo Horvat under contract, then the former might just go after Bo and sign him to be their replacement first-line center, which I honestly don't know if that would be all too much of a great move, because Bo being, let's just face it, the third best center on his team right now, because he's behind Petey and he's behind Miller, going over to a Red Wings team where he has to be the number one, I kind of question how well he's going to be able to do in that role. I know a lot of Canucks fans love Bo Horvat, and I do too. It's just, can you really tell me that he is in that caliber? I'm not sure. So, talk to the comments, your thoughts about the Kypreos article. By the way, the link will be in the description if you want to go ahead and read it. It's a long piece that goes over Tavares and the Maple Leafs and everything going on with their organization. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section about this Horvat, Larkin, Detroit, Vancouver thing. I hope you enjoyed this. Juraj, 99, and bye.